Hello and welcome back to the Toffee Blues YouTube channel, your source for all things Everton. My name's Thomas, back with a very special video on the channel today, doing a scout report on our brand new signing, Abdoulaye Doucoure from Watford. And of course, no better man to get on to tell us all about the player, joined by Adam Leventhal, the Athletics Watford correspondent. Thanks for coming on. How are you doing today, Adam?
Yeah, I'm good. I wore a sort of a slight blue colour just in honour of Abdoulaye Doucoure's new location. I couldn't go full blue though because of the 1984 in the FA Cup final. I just couldn't do it. But yeah, it's good to be here. How's it going?
Yeah, we're very happy to have you on. I mean, I'm glad we finally got this one done. As we're going to go into it, about how we might be in interest last year, but are you very busy at the moment with all of Watford's transfer business going on? I'd imagine there's quite a bit coming and going at the moment.
Yeah, surprise, surprise. There seems to be quite a few players that want to leave after Premier League relegation. But yeah, it's a busy time. All transfer windows are busy. Whether it's not covering Watford, just in general. But after a relegation, I think it just becomes even more busy. And Watford is quite a unique club. The fact that they've got that relationship with Udinese, it means that. Yeah, it's quite far-reaching, the scouting network as well. So, yeah, it's hectic, it's busy. You never really know what's around the corner. But this Doucoure deal was always in the offing. And I'm glad for him that he's finally got his move to Everton because he really wanted to go to Goodison.
Yeah, well, we'll kind of start there anyway because obviously Marco Silva was our manager last year. He seemed very keen on him. Seemed like one of those players he wanted to bring across from Watford. Of course, we originally only got Richarlison, but then went in for Doucoure. There was rumoured of a £35 million bid rejected. I don't know too much about that, but what was that situation like and why didn't it really materialise? Was it very much a case of Watford not wanting to sell because he was a very important player, or what were the kind of reasons behind that not working out last year?
I mean, first and foremost, that interest was genuine. Those bids that you mentioned, sort of 35 up to 40 million were on the table. I think part of it was that the wounds after Marco Silva's departure and that relationship was still a little bit fresh. Not to say that they, wouldn't sell to Everton because obviously the Richarlison deal happened after Marco Silva's departure. So it wasn't sort of completely that the bridges were burned and they wouldn't do business with Everton. But I think at that time also, Watford were thinking, Watford had just finished 11th in the Premier League. Things were looking good. They were thinking, well, should we be retaining a player like Abdoulaye Doucoure if we want to go up to the next level? And is 35, 40 million, are we going to be able to replace a player like that? And also, are we selling to the right club in terms of his next step? Shouldn't we be selling a Doucoure to a Tottenham or a Manchester United or an Arsenal who are, making that next step into either Europa League or into Champions League position? So I think that was all part of the equation at that time. I think it was a frustration to Abdoulaye at that time as well, because he was thinking that he was going to leave, and he was hoping that he was going to leave because he was very. I think very sort of honoured to be linked with a bigger club than Watford, and it was nice to be wanted by another club. And obviously, we'll talk about it in a moment, I'm sure, about the fact that interest went on and on and on, which basically sealed the deal this time around. But I think it had an impact on his form this season, just gone, which didn't start too well. He scored an own goal on the opening day of the season, and it sort of went downhill from there for a little bit for him. And I actually spoke to him for The Athletic. I think it was just after the Manchester City defeat at the Etihad, that 8-0 defeat. Watford then played in a Carabao Cup game against Swansea, and he played. And I spoke to him afterwards, and he admitted the fact that, yeah, he thought he was going to be going. He is now sort of hopefully getting back to his normal levels at that stage. And I think he had a far better tail end of the season last season than he did the beginning portion of the campaign. So, yeah, it's a bit of a legacy one, this one. It's been dragging on for such a long time. But yeah, as I mentioned before, I'm glad that he's got his move to the club that he knows that he wanted to go to.
Yeah, because we kind of spoke there about the original bids around 35, 40 million. We think now it's around 20, 25. And some people might look at that with some concern and think, I mean, there's a lot that goes into that. I mean, Watford's relegation will definitely have a part to play in that, because, you know, the players much more intent on maybe forcing a move. Obviously, that fee has dropped quite considerably. Yes, another year off his contract, the year in his age. There is a lot, but some of that, some people might be concerned about form. And people I've spoken to so far, he didn't have the best season last season, I understand, but I mean, still a good player. It's not like he's lost the quality. But how did his development kind of go from that window kind of for the rest of the season? You mentioned there, didn't start great. You know, did he not hit the kind of levels that maybe he did under Marco Silva, and that's why we were so keen on him?
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, it was an emotional impact on his form. I think also what had an impact was the fact that Watford transitioned between 3 different head coaches as well, which is always going to have an impact. Obviously, that has an impact on your emotions as well. You think, oh, I could have been somewhere else, and I've stayed here, and I'm in a bit of a mess of a situation, which is going to sort of add to that sort of emotional turmoil. But also tactically, when you're being shifted around, you're being played in sort of different positions. I mean, most of the time under Javi Gracia, it was him holding alongside Etienne Capoue. He'd be the one going box to box. Similar story under Quique Sanchez Flores, but there was a little bit of a change in Quique's way of playing. He started off, because Watford were conceding so many goals and he didn't have much belief in the defence. He was playing 3 at the back. So then that had an impact on what Doucoure could do in midfield. You know, not necessarily having to shield quite as much, being pressurised to go forward a little bit more. But at that time, Watford didn't have all their attacking threats that they did then have later on in the season. The likes of Ismail Assar wasn't really being played. There was no Troy Deeney at that point. So the whole team was a little bit unbalanced. So that wasn't a good time to be in the engine room. And then later on in the season, there was a significant change for him, because having been played alongside Etienne Capoue, he was then played as an attacking midfield role, almost like a number 10, which, although what he has in his locker could be suited to that role, his preferred position is box to box. He likes doing that. He likes to be, you know, on both Ds, up and at him, always going. He's full of energy. So I think that was, you know, it was another change for him. He missed a couple of opportunities which he should have scored, but then he scored a great goal against Brighton, which a lot of Everton fans, I'm sure, have seen and thought, right, brilliant. If he can do that for us, then jobs are good. But I just think overall, there were so many other things that contributed to his lack of form, that it wasn't necessarily him just being in decline and him just losing his powers. There were so many other things going on. The hope for him will be now, right, I've got my move, fresh start, I can get back to my levels. There will obviously be an uncertainty whether he can get back to that player of 2-3 seasons ago. But, you know, he's not an old guy. He's still very fit. He has that natural athleticism. Technically, he's good, but he's also got that power as well, that, you know, he will just keep running all day long. And hopefully, for his point of view, and also now, you know, Watford aren't competing against Everton, I can say, you know, good luck to him, and I hope he has a good season.
It seems like a very good fit for kind of all parties now. Obviously, okay, Ancelotti wasn't the manager last year, but clearly he agrees with Marcel Brands, he agrees with Marco Silva as being a very good fit for the club. We desperately needed a completely new centre midfield. We lacked energy, I mean, tackling ability, defensive ability, driving up the pitch, everything you might expect from a midfield. So was this just almost kind of inevitable going into this summer, that this was just a very good fit for all the parties involved? And I'm not sure how much of this is speculation as well, but there was rumoured to be other clubs interested. I'm not sure how much of that is true. But was this always kind of going to happen, or maybe did he think about going somewhere else? I know maybe Monaco were interested at some point. What are your kind of thoughts on how good of a fit it was and how inevitable it is, really?
I think it seemed highly likely, let's put it that way, that it was going to be Everton right from the start of this transfer window, due to the fact that they had had that interest for such a long time. And I think that meant a lot to him. The fact that they had retained that interest, they were straight back in with sort of initial discussions early on in this transfer window. Things were agreed pretty much in principle very, very early on. And I know it dragged on to just a couple of days ago, or yesterday, that it was finally sort of ratified and announced. But it was pretty much all agreed, bar the fee. I think from the point of view of why he wanted to go to Everton over any other club was that interest, working with Carlo Ancelotti, this new project, which is, gathering pace with obviously Alan arriving, James as well, seeing speculation about Wilfried Zaha maybe joining the party as well. It might start to get a bit unfair on the rest of the Premier League if this carries on. And I don't know where all the money's coming from, especially because you've got a new stadium to pay for. So, it's good. It's all good on paper. You obviously got Richarlison there as well. Other good players as well. So those were some of the reasons why he wanted to be part of that project. In terms of the other teams that were interested, I think that his mind was always set on going to Everton, but other clubs naturally did make inquiries. I know that there was sort of tentative interest from Wolves, from Fulham, and there was also interest from Hertha Berlin in the Bundesliga as well. But I think when you've sort of had your heart set on a move for, the best part of 18 months, and pretty much everything is agreed, and if, Everton is the buying club, and I know that money, they're not just splashing cash all over the shop. It needs to sort of be balanced out. You get your players in, and then maybe a few can go the other direction and recoup some of that money. But I think that he was always pretty confident that Everton would stump up enough cash and that the deal would be done. The exact breakdown of the fee isn't known yet. I'm sure it will become clear. But as I understand it, the initial fee is £22 million. I don't think that that's inclusive of. I think that's sort of shy of the add-ons, and then eventually it may well be worth the deal £25 million. But as you raised earlier on, that's £15 million less than Watford could have got last summer if they had actually sold him. So from an Everton point of view, it's great. From a Watford point of view, you do look at it and you go, well, you might have had a demotivated player for a season, and you could have had a very motivated player coming in and replacing him for a season. And could that have made a difference? Probably not, because the other 10 players weren't really up to it anyway. But there's lots of things connected with that Doucoure deal, which was sort of lingering around for quite some time, and finally it has got done.
We spoke about how keen he was on coming to Everton. He was very interested in it last season, and it seems that Ancelotti this season with his recruitment is not only looking at the quality of player. I mean, don't get me wrong, he doesn't lack quality, but also maybe the characters that he signed as well. He's spoken quite a few times about trying to change the mentality of the club. He's trying to build an atmosphere that he knows can, improve the squad, but also potentially go on to win things. So what kind of character is Abdoulaye Doucoure? I mean, we can only look from the outside in. From our perspective, I mean, he's been walking around Liverpool signing Everton shirts for the past kind of 3 or 4 days. He's been in the hotels. He's been liking Everton tweets. Seems very keen. So what kind of character is he? Not only, on social media, but also at the training ground?
I think in general terms, he's a good bloke. And I think that comes across from the actions that, you've seen already of his short time at Everton. He's ambitious, and that might have sort of got a little bit ahead of him early doors. Having had a couple of good seasons at Watford, he was already sort of setting his sights on the next move. Paris Saint-Germain were interested in him back before they actually signed Gana Gay, your player that went ahead of him, and he didn't get that move in the end, so he stayed at Watford. And I think that was maybe, from sort of the hierarchy's point of view, it was a bit like, well, don't necessarily just look at your next move. Just concentrate and keep on doing what you're doing here. But in general terms, he's a very sort of focused player, good in the dressing room, well respected by other professionals. He's not someone that causes problems. He's not outspoken. He's always fair with the media. He will always stop and say hello. He's a good character. And yeah, you're right. I think if Carlo Ancelotti is looking for these sort of people who aren't going to sort of rock the boat and are going to be able to form into a greater unit collectively, then he fits the bill perfectly. And I think, if you take Watford's interests out of what I was saying about, maybe being too ambitious, there's nothing wrong with that. If someone wants to move to a bigger club having performed well in the Premier League, then quite right. You should be doing that. I think what he needs to do now is to make sure that he is, fully on it, gets his confidence, fully up to speed with his new teammates. He might be slightly behind in terms of his sort of his match fitness because he hasn't played any games with Watford. He's been training slightly away from the first team group because this deal has sort of been lingering on, and they always knew that he was going to be leaving. But I do know that he's been working hard on his fitness, and he's been training and things like that. So I don't think it'll be a massive problem. He's not someone like in the olden days, and they've only had a short period of time since they were playing anyway, where you go away, go on a sort of a 6-week bender as a footballer and come back all bloated. He's fit as a fiddle, and I'm sure he will slot in. So yeah, I think it's going to be a great signing for Everton because he's a good character essentially.
Yeah, and you kind of spoken there about his physicality, his energy. Yeah, he might not be 100% fit, but we know, well, first of all, he knows the league, which is a massive part of players when they move. I mean, we of course have signed Allen and James. Do we know if they're going to hit the ground running? Maybe not. They might need a couple of weeks. I mean, there's going to be plenty of games for them to bed in. Let's be honest, it's not going to be a quiet time in the next few months. But in terms of his kind of athleticism, his strength, what are a few of his key attributes? We've kind of spoken about his technical ability, but kind of because Allen he looks like he's coming to kind of break up the play, be that kind of hard tackler. How is that going to kind of complement Doucoure? Because I'd imagine they're going to work together. And we'll speak about systems in just a moment, really. But I'd imagine the partnership will eventually be Allen and Doucoure. So what kind of would Doucoure add to that kind of partnership?
I must admit, I've not watched Allen as much as I have of Abdoulaye Doucoure, but I would imagine that it would probably be a similar sort of relationship that Doucoure has had with Etienne Capoue, who, reads the game particularly well in terms of interceptions, not necessarily hard tackling, more predictive tackling, just being in the right place at the right time, and then being able to have Doucoure around him to then carry the ball quickly away and start attacks and be available around both penalty areas, whether it's defending or attacking, becoming an extra, attacker when needed, getting into the box. Also in terms of his athleticism, being a key part of a high press, if that's what Carlo Ancelotti is going to do. That was something that he was particularly adept at Watford, almost leading the press. Etienne Capoue would also do that sometimes just by himself in these, long legs, buccaneering runs that he would make and just sort of be charging around and getting the ball. But Doucoure was always part of that. And I think that is one of his main assets. Obviously his height and his speed carrying the ball is another key attribute. Isn't shy of getting involved in tackles as well. So that, that will be, if there's a very combative engine room in a game, which is hard tackles and, the ball flying in and around, he will get involved as well. So, he's not shy in those terms. So I think all round he's what you want in terms of someone who is going to upgrade the engine room. I mean, if I compare him to, someone like Andre Gomez, he's an upgrade on Gomez, and that's not being unfair on him. I think he was badly affected, obviously, last season by his injury. But I think what Doucoure will be able to bring in comparison with Gomez is just a little bit more, especially if he hits his straps and gets back to the player that we know. Yeah,
and then you spoke just before about maybe he was employed sometimes in a three at the back, which he didn't like. Obviously not in the three at the back, but with three central defenders. We know Ancelotti likes to play a 4-4-2. In pre-season, we've seen him play a 4-3-3. Obviously, Ancelotti is a very tactically flexible coach, which we know he's very happy to kind of. It's not like he's got one system that he comes to play. He's got various different systems. But what would you say really suits Doucoure the most after, I mean, seeing him maybe in, under quite a few managers, might be quite a few systems really. What would you say kind of gets the most out of Doucoure?
I think if he is alongside a central midfielder who is sitting and happy to be either purely a shield or a quarterback alongside him, he will do the up and down all day long, and that's something that he wants to do, and he can be active all over the pitch. It's not just in one direction. He will go and sort of supplement over on the right hand side and can be part of that. Obviously, on the left-hand side, he will also defend deep, but also attack to the byline as well. I mean, we saw that, I think it was the game against Liverpool, wasn't it? When the ball was sort of thrown into the box. I think it went over, I can't recall, I think it was Lovren. And it was Doucoure who got to the byline and pulled the ball back for Ismail Assar. So, he will get involved in every area of the pitch. That's his key asset, that he is everywhere. He's like an Energizer bunny. He will be everywhere. He can be where you need him to be. But I think also he's able to be disciplined in situations where, say, if Everton are under the pump and things aren't going to plan, he will be able to sort of sit there and shield and be aggressive in the tackle, and be able to squeeze the spaces in between the midfield and defence. He will do a job. He's very sort of he doesn't lose his head. He's not sort of a really emotional player. He's more functional. He will do what needs to be done. I think he will definitely upgrade that midfield, especially with those other higher caliber players around him. And also, I think it's of benefit to him that he's coming in with other new players as well. So it's not just like he's the only new kid in town. You've got other players. He's obviously got, fellow countryman Lucas Digne, and, I think that will help as well. So I think it should be a good mix. Should be a good mix for Everton.
Yeah, it's definitely exciting, and definitely, I personally think, because obviously we've had this flurry of transfer activity over the past kind of week or so, I think this one's sailed under the radar more than the others, but I think it's actually probably the smartest out of the three. I mean, I know Ancelotti likes Allen a lot, and he obviously likes James, but Doucoure knows the league. He's exactly what we needed. He's that energy, he's that box-to-box midfielder, which he even spoke about in his interview as soon as he joined the club. That's basically the role he's already been asked to play. So very exciting. And then that's kind of it for my football and related questions, but a question that it's been discussed amongst Everton fans recently. We seem to have a very different kind of contract approach than we have in the past. We saw with James, he was given a 2-year with a 1-year extension if he plays certain games. This one's 3 years with an optional extension from the club. Do you think that makes a lot of sense? It's not something we've really seen as Everton fans before, but does it make a lot of sense? And do you think that's going to work out well?
Yeah, I think so. I see no reason why this can't be a move that sticks. And I suppose all of those moves that have been made are sort of dependent on things going to plan, aren't they? So yeah, if all is going well, all those three players maybe after 1 or 2 seasons will be in a position to extend and potentially go all the way to the end of their careers. Who knows? But yeah, I think with Everton, from the outside looking in, it's the first time that you've looked at all the signings, and the calibre of the signings have not raised any super doubts. They look like solid additions to a squad that just needs to upgrade. I think in the past there have been some arrivals and you thought, right, well, they've addressed that side of the pitch, but they haven't done the other side, or they've left things out. Now it seems that things will they've sort of plugged the gaps that really needed to be, and taken, especially obviously the midfield, up to another level. So yeah, I mean, he will be hoping that it's a 4-year stay, and if he does perform to the levels that we've seen in the past when he sort of broke onto the scene at Watford, then I'm sure he will get that extra year. But then there's also the chance, and let's not forget this, it's similar to Richarlison as well. if things don't quite go to plan, or if things are going really well with Everton, then that is your next step before you get into a Champions League team as well. So, enjoy it, but it's not the be all and end all, I don't think. And these are ambitious players, and when they're flying, they might also be tough for even Everton and the money bags to hold on to.
Yeah. So, I mean, thank you very much for coming on. That's pretty much all my questions. So, thanks for coming on. There's much better insight than I can definitely give in a Doucoure. And thank you all very much for watching. Of course, check out Adam's social media. Check out The Athletic. I mentioned it before, #1 site for football news at the moment. You won't find it better anywhere else. Thanks for all your support on the videos recently as well. I mean, this transfer activity that we were just speaking about, I mean, it's been an insane couple of weeks, really. But thank you all for your support. Check out the Toffee Blues social media. And as I mentioned, thank you very much for watching, and we'll join you next time on the Toffee Blues.